We're seeing the financial system change before our eyes. Most people can't see it.
How's things going financially on the markets and all that sort of stuff? What news do you have that I can sink my teeth into today?
It's a great time of change. We're seeing the financial system change before our eyes. Most people can't see it, but when you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. And that's what's really exciting. I mean, it's no accident gold, silver prices are going berserk at the moment. Okay, there's a lot of uncertainty as what's going on in the world, and you'd expect that to go up. However, what you're seeing fight out is, the demand between what Wall Street wants to trade it at with shorting the market and pushing the prices down through to what the physical demand is in the Shanghai markets. And I think that's just one part of the whole, one cog in the whole system there where we're seeing this play out. One of the bigger indicators is at the moment, kind of behind closed doors, but invited by the White House to debate these sort of things. And it's around what we call the Clarity Act. And this is a big piece of legislation that is really going through the Senate at the moment. And they've invited the Securities Exchange Commission, the SEC, which is the equivalent of Australia's ASIC, and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, CFTC, trying to come together and establish really clear jurisdictional boundaries between both of these organizations so that the crypto industry knows what the rules are. And that's what they've been asking for a long time because they haven't known what the rules are. And there's been a lot of debate about stablecoin rules. Now, you just rewind a little bit. We had the Genius Act go through in 2025, the early part of that, and three things really came out of that as far as I summarize and see it. One, it legitimized and said that cryptocurrency was legal tender, which is recognizing it, and that's fascinating. Number two, it said that it had to be backed by something, which is really, really revolutionary because fiat currency was depegged from gold standard back in 1971 with the Nixon era. And so now these stablecoins have to actually represent something. And then number three, it also allowed cryptocurrency companies to issue currency, which has always been reserved for the banks. Now, you keep that in mind. This is revolutionary. And what we're seeing right now is the argy-bargy with the discussions as far as the Clarity Act is concerned between the banks and the cryptocurrencies. And the real sticking point for them is the ability to allow crypto exchanges and platforms offering interest payments or rewards on stablecoins. The banks do not want this. The banks are arguing that this measure is essential to prevent stablecoins from functioning like unregulated saving accounts, which could draw deposits away from traditional banks and undermine the payment focus intent of last year's Genius Act. In other words, they're terrified that deposits will move away from banks and go onto cryptocurrency exchanges and also private wallets. Now, if that occurs, they're saying, look, that's not good. It'd be unregulated. What do we do? Whereas the crypto advocates, they're saying that the restriction would stifle competition and innovation, saying that the Genius Act already limits issuers but leaves platforms untouched. Now, what this really is fascinating, I think there's also a deeper issue here that the banks are admitting to, and it's this, is it affects their ability to lend out money. Because if money isn't in their deposits, in their treasuries, then they can't leverage that and lend it out anymore as well. It restricts their ability to do that. And so there's this real fight between people having custody on choice, and even to the point where I would argue self-custody. The banks don't want you to have self-custody. They want your money sitting on their deposits and on their balance sheets. So this fight is going on. Now, they've been given a deadline that March 1, they have to come up with a solution. And it's interesting because a lot of the big heavyweights in this space have been invited to meet. And the reporters are coming out and saying, well, that both sides need to know where the boundary lines are. But, nobody's been shouting at each other. So, things are moving on well. But yeah, they've had several meetings, like 2 or 3 meetings to try to get this sorted. And of course, March the 1st is only a few days away. That's not long at all. So it's a real tussle for freedom, for people to have the choice of freedoms. And the banking cartel wanting to, hey, we want our slice of the pie. We want to be the middleman and continue to be the middleman in this process.
Just so I've got it clear, because remember, I'm not Luan's the one that gets into the crypto, not me. I'm more around options trading and stocks, stuff like that. So what they're saying is, so let's use, let's say USDT on the Tether network. So that's Ethereum from memory. So if, let's say USDT, you've got $1 million of USDT, the people who issue the coin, so Tether or Ethereum, are not allowed to pay you interest. Is that the way I'm reading this correctly?
What they're arguing with the crypto exchanges. So to move your money, generally most people do this. They move the money from a bank account to a crypto exchange.
Yes.
What the banks don't want is the crypto exchanges to be able to reward the people who move their money over, like interest and those kind of payments and those, you know, the staking features that crypto do.
Yeah. So I've been doing. Yeah, while you've been talking about this, I did a quick. Again, I'm loving ChatGPT with this. It's actually, the information has been pretty accurate, so I'm kind of inclined. And no, we are not sponsored by ChatGPT, but if you do want to sponsor this show, reach out to edgeradioaustralia.com.au on the website, and we can sort that out. But so the way Chat is explaining it is the issuer of the coin, for example, Tron, Ethereum, Bitcoin, isn't the ones that pay the interest, but the exchanges are the ones that pay the interest. And I'm like, hang on, isn't that exactly the same as the banks? So it's not the Australian government that's paying you interest on your AUD. It's the banks that hold your AUD that is paying you interest to have their money. So that's the way I'm seeing this. It's the exact same thing, just one's a bank, one's a crypto exchange.
It depends on how it's set up in its programming. So in a lot of, this is where it gets complex. It gets a bit nerdy, the whole space. There's centralized crypto and there's decentralized crypto. Centralized crypto basically means that one body can turn it on and off at any time. Pretty much like you put money in your bank, that's centralized finance. They can switch your bank accounts off like that if they just so determine. Okay,
and they do.
And this is, and they do. And this is why the government has been pushing a lot of know your client rules as well on them, because they say it's anti-laundering and all that sort of stuff. Now that's arguable whether that's the sole reason, but that's what occurs. And so decentralized takes that power away from a centralized body, because a lot of different computers that can't be shut down have to all agree on the network, on the cryptocurrency space. Yes, this transaction is legit and it's gone off ahead. What it does then require is that the person using decentralized is responsible for their own payments and also self-custody. Okay, in other words, they are the bank, and if they lose the crypto keys to unlock these kind of things when they put in security, it's on them. You can't ring up the bank and try to retrieve it, okay, or a crypto company to do that. Now, depending on the way these networks are designed, can determine how users can receive rewards. So there's been an often one called staking. It's probably the most common, where people will put the crypto coins to work. They'll lock them up for a period of time, or they'll delegate them to some sort of provider building the blockchain. And since they lock it away for, like, say, 14 days or however long, they are then rewarded with other additional coins because of that effort. The banks don't like it because they offer bigger interest rates than the banks will.
So to me, that just sounds like a term deposit. Like in the equivalent in the banking world is, you're right, you give us your money, you lock it up, we'll give you a higher interest rate. The crypto side, right, you stake it. Yeah,
sorry to interrupt you. I thought you finished. Go ahead.
So it's literally the same thing. Like the exchange is saying, right, we'll lock up your money for a certain time period and we'll give you back your money, because that's what we do with our Ethereum. So I can see why the banks wouldn't like this, because effectively they're trying to steal the clients for themselves.
Well, not just that, they're getting cut out as middleman. Because if everybody does it, Travis, on a decentralized finance, you got to start asking the question, why do we need a bank?
We don't.
What's the need for a bank if somebody can take self-custody and do this themselves? And so that's the challenge there. Because what happens is, think about it in terms of investment vehicles as well. Let's say you've got a bit of money set aside and you want to invest it. Well, the banks basically say, invest it with us, okay? And then they keep that in reserve. And so they will invest it on different various products and markets and give you a cut, and they'll take their cut, okay? What if you, and you're getting it at retail level, what if you get it at a wholesale level and not have to pay those fees and cuts? That's where the point is, all right? And this is what they're terrified of. that and the ability to lend out. If they can't do their fractional reserve banking, well, let's say they have a 1-to-9 ratio, right? You deposit $1,000 in, they can lend out $9,000 now to the marketplace. Well, if those funds aren't sitting there but on crypto exchanges instead, that's gone. That whole marketplace is gone. So this is what's actually really happening behind the scenes here.
So I wonder if there's a way to stagger the release so that the impact, because obviously we don't want to see, I know some people out there want to see banks crash and burn and never exist again, but the fallout from that is going to hurt the everyday person more than what is going to hurt the banks, because they'll just get a bailout like they did during the GFC. I wonder if there's a way to stagger it, because I've always been a firm believer that competition breeds better products. If you're under pressure, if you're always constantly working at something, well, think about it this way. Carbon without pressure is coal, but with pressure it's a diamond. So if you've got multiple companies and industries fighting for that dollar, you don't end up with better deals. That's just the nature of competition. So I wonder if there's a way that the government can, instead of just going, right, yeah, you can send $10 trillion over into the crypto market instead of going with the banks, is there a way they can sort of stagger it so banks have a chance to catch up, reduce their exposure on the lending side of things so that they can actually compete on the level pegging? That's what I'd love to see.
Well, that's what I think they're trying to do, is to reach some sort of compromise between the crypto industry and the banks. And, you know, it's kind of funny with the compromise because nobody's quite happy with the end result.
Yeah, everyone's
everybody's annoyed that they didn't get the full agreement what they want. But this is really important legislation moving forward, because the United States, being the world's biggest economy, a lot of nations will probably follow suit in terms of the legislation the US decides on. So the legislators are going, look, we need the time to get this right. We need to get this right. Some people are saying, listen, it's never 100% perfect. Yeah, okay, granted, but they don't want to. And I've heard many of the politicians say this. What we don't want is a Biden era coming into play once again that unwinds what we've just set up. We want this to go on and move forward. And I think what you have to understand is that a lot of the big players in finance are also wanting cryptocurrency to move forward now. Okay, we're seeing $1.1 billion move into a certain sector of ETFs on the market just over the Christmas period. But not only that, we've heard Larry Fink, you know, go around the campaign trails, and who is he? He's the CEO of BlackRock. They're wanting to tokenize assets. Okay, now to do that, you've got to do that on the blockchain. Now, there are pros and cons for tokenizing assets, and people are concerned it's too much control to them, et cetera, et cetera. But regardless, it's the indicator that there is change and blockchain is not going away, that this will be the new future. And so this piece of legislation is really, really important. But you've got this fight between the crypto exchanges and, of course, the banks. I mean, think about it from the crypto exchanges' point of view. If it becomes a point where they don't have a wow factor, they can't offer more than the banks can, then they're kind of out of the equation, right? Whereas, so there's got to be something in there for them, and the banks are threatened that too much business will move away. Well, they've had it good for a very, very long time. So you've got to wonder, what are they actually offering their customers? They've got to get more competitive and smarter in the way they treat their clientele.
Personally, I would love to see this happen. I think the banks do need to understand that they don't have a monopoly on this anymore. Get it? The bank's monopoly. But I think people definitely need to understand what's going on with this one. Crypto, the world's getting smaller and smaller, and people need better places to hide. Having gold and silver, you know, locked in your cupboard or in a safe or under the bed is getting less and less practical. I think crypto is actually going to be the way for people to keep their anonymity online, and especially with the purchases as they get older, because the world is just going to start getting smaller and smaller and smaller as we move forward and as technology gets better. So I think if someone was going to try and learn about the Genius Act and about crypto and what they're doing and how to preserve their identity online, stuff like that, especially around finance, what would they do? What would they need to do, Mr. Whitaker? Where would they need to go to learn this sort of information?
Obviously, we can help them, of course, with that education. We do that here at Blue Sky Factory.
And where is Blue Sky Factory? Thank you very much. So blueskyfactory.com.au. Email Derek. He's got some amazing courses about this one. So, yeah. And didn't you have a live show recently?
We just did it. Yeah, we did. We just had a couple of seminars. One was live in person, and for those who were interstate, we did one online as well. And yeah, they went really well. Thank you.
Sorry, that was really hard work trying to lead you to give yourself a self plug there, but we got there in the end, Derry. So,
I just want to say one thing though, Travis. I just want to say one thing. People think that trading in crypto is totally private. It's not. It's actually on the blockchain, and it can be traced at any time. And some people argue that's the attraction of it because it keeps it more audited and authentic. So there's less opportunity to do anything nefarious with that. Having said that, there are sectors where there are private coins and all this sort of stuff. And what we're seeing with these kind of acts that the US is doing is this all is getting defined and how and what the ways are to move forward. Let me just say one other thing too. My reason for bringing up the whole BlackRock wanting tokenization thing is that the more tokenization that actually occurs, the likelihood of unwinding it is more difficult from a legislative point of view, because more companies have now moved into that space, and to unwind it, it would affect the everyday citizens as well, who are having money invested on their behalf with these firms. So that's another thing that is playing into this.
Okay. So again, I think it's really important people to understand what's going on in this one. I think it's you need to know the system that you're working in. So I think the Genius Act is starting to do that. Has it gone far enough? I'm not sure. I think what people, the complaints against it, the arguments on it, is going to be actually clearing things up. So I actually don't mind that they're pushing back against it, because it does clarify things. My next question is, in the event that it's actually deemed that the banks are right in this aspect, people are clever cookies. They're going to find a way around things. What do you think is going to happen if it actually does prove right that the banks are right, that the government, sorry, not the government, the legal system does rule in favor with the banks, and that the exchanges can't pay the interest, they can't do things like this? It will define the rules. What do you think is going to happen after that?
Well, I think if that was going to happen, it just means that people will go into more self-custody than leaving their money on an exchange. The exchanges are trying to make it easy, I think, for people to do things like staking, one-click buttons, all this sort of stuff, whereas there are a few more hoops to jump through if you are doing it yourself in self-custody with decentralization. And I think that probably will be the choice that consumers are then left with. Do I learn how to do this in a decentralized fashion versus just leaving it on an exchange and pushing a few buttons and checking on it once in a while? And there are pros and cons for both. But I think it would probably force the issue of people having to learn more on how to do it themselves.
Yep. My gut is telling me that people have already lost faith in the banks. Let's talk about Australia, where the banks were actually repossessing people's farms. So they've been in families for hundreds of years. People in general are fed up with the banks. They can't go down and talk to people anymore because the banks continuously is shutting branches, and it's not viable anymore to keep your money with the bank. So I think people are screaming out for differences. That's why they're looking more at the stock market. They're looking more in gold and silver. Again, crypto. I love the fact that the Genius Act has actually started defining what crypto can actually legally be in America. I don't think it'll be long until other countries start following suit. But I think this pushback was needed to be able to clarify exactly where the goalposts are, so you don't end up having that thing where, oh yeah, let's go do this investment strategy. Then you find out that all your goalposts have moved and everything becomes not
this legislation is already rolling out in front of the world. I mean, the United Kingdom is doing it big time. England, we're seeing Japan, who's probably ahead of the game than the rest of the world, the Western world, is really, really heavily loaded into the whole crypto space. We're seeing Dubai do that. Dubai's so far ahead, they're tokenizing real estate at the moment. So this is where things certainly are going. And as far as the banks are concerned, I think you've got to get back to what is customer service. How are we serving our clients? What do you actually use a bank for? Well, I think people use it for a couple of reasons. One, they need to park their money somewhere and to be able to pay things online, pay bills, everyday sort of things. That's one reason why. So there is some custody issues. I think the second one is they go to the banks for lending. But here's the thing, here's the challenge. Decentralized finance is now allowing you to lend against crypto assets, which is challenging that whole notion. And there's another reason why the banks are probably fighting it. And the third thing is, in terms of financial products, we go to banks for insurances, financial planning, all that sort of stuff. Well, some certain sectors of the society do. And I think, I think you've got to get smarter with it in terms of what is it that the customers actually want, and return to good old-fashioned customer service.